signed into law on June 16th, 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. People who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. Good morning, everyone. I would like to first take a look at the minutes. Did anybody have anything?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Good morning,
I
Tom.
can't hear you.
It's nice to see you.
What's going on here?
Our Tom M and our Tom B. Karina. Good morning, Karina.
Morning.
And of course, John. I was just talking to him. So anyway, does anybody have any discussions or on the minutes? No? Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes as handed out that you've seen?
So moved.
So moved. So a second?
Second.
Okay. This is a roll call vote. Marty?
Aye.
John? Tom M? John, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Aye.
Okay. Tom M?
Aye.
Tom B?
I wasn't here last time. Should I still be voting on the minutes?
Did you read them?
Yeah,
You can
I'm
still
good.
vote.
Aye.
Okay. Alex?
Aye.
And Dorianne is aye. Those are unanimously accepted.
Thanks, John.
Okay, John has to leave a little earlier than the rest of us, so I'm gonna ask him just to give a quick discussion on the ARPA final rule and spending. He was the chair for a day, so let him.
Yeah,
He
please
so
put that in
eloquently
the
stated to
day.
me that he
Thursday
very
they're going to be
eloquently.
electing a chair. That shouldn't be me.
Right.
So-
All right. So could you take that part of it, John? That way it's done before you leave.
Sure. Real quick, I'm on the ARPA committee. As you know, the town got a little over $3 million to use for the recovery fund. So what my committee asked me to do last week is we sent out an email to all the boards, committees, department heads, departments, asking for pretty much a bullet point, 4 points wish list. If you could have ARPA money, what you would use it for. Pretty much any purchase over $10,000 that lasts long has to go through, be vetted through capital anyway. But as I understand, if you say you want, these aren't my opinion, I'm just throwing things out, what you could use it for. So ARPA funding can be used to respond to health, to the public health emergency, or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, industry, tourism, respond to workers performing, blah, 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 blah. There's a bunch of stuff that was Marnie Houlihan put together. She unfortunately couldn't stand the committee. She put together that PowerPoint presentation, which is an overview of the overview with different criteria. If you haven't looked at, take a quick look at that. But for something like Shopc, I think you could say, would like to take X amount of dollars and put it towards a senior relief fund for rent or mortgage, or we want to buy land for this. You could pretty much use it for anything. It's a wish list. I'm not saying you're going to get it. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of requests. So what's going to happen is we're hoping to have these 4 items from every board committee by the 15th. So we can start doing a rating system and see what's a common thread, and then go from there. And because we got a pretty quick turnaround on it, the selectmen would like us to have our recommendation to them by, I think, March 16th, if it's going to be on the warrant. And I think it was like early May, just in general. So we got a lot of work to do. So we're hoping to have all the requests and thoughts from every board and committee before the 15th, so we can start vetting them. I do know that Shopc, as well as Youth and Family and Schools, were on the short list of boards and committees that my committee wanted to come in and see if there was anything that they thought they could use it for. Because this week we have Board of Health, Facilities, Capital, and DPW, coming into our meeting to tell us about the first thing. Capital is going to give us their 5 or 10 year capital overview and what's out there. Because I've heard from different people is that if you use this towards capital, that's the best way to offset taxes for everybody. But this week we're going to discuss, well, I don't know if it's this week or a future week, but we're going to discuss what my committee actually wants to see it happen with. Do we want to take care of Do we want to help more of the taxpayers for tax relief? Do we want to see the capital things to be taken care of for that? Do we want to see more programs that need to be done for the COVID crisis and things like that? So that's why we're looking for the info from every board and committee, but this was a big one. The Shopc committee is one that they really wanted to hear from. So
I got a question for you, John. Is that
no,
for just purchases?
no.
I ignore half the stuff you say. Is that for purchases of things and not maintenance of things?
Can be for anything, pretty much anything you wanted to put in the general fund, it can be used for. They loosened up the restrictions and the revenue replacement part of it. There used to be a big formula, but now it's up to $10 million. So ours can be used for pretty much anything, as I believe, for purchases, for maintenance.
Yep.
So hypothetically, you can say, I want to put, it's going to cost X amount of money for 10 years maintenance of Y. I want that.
No, only
Thank you.
because the funds need to be expended by 2026.
2026.
They have to be obligated by 2024 and expended by 2026. And John's right, the final rule that just came out from the Treasury Department allows communities to adopt what's called the standard allowance. The standard allowance is up to $10 million. The community can elect to spend the funds however they want at, whatever a town or municipality usually provides in terms of service. They can spend it on really anything. The interim final rule did not indicate that. It had a much more narrowed criteria for spending, but it sounds like Southborough is electing that standard allowance, which is great. This is something that I'm extremely familiar with because I'm spearheading it for another community. So I'm happy to jump in and provide any insight if anybody has questions or whatever you need for support, John.
You're muted,
I'm gonna
John.
regret saying that, Tara. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad you're here today. That was a much better episode.
Happy to help.
Alex,
My head was spinning reading it, but could you just you may have just stated it. Could you restate what the total value of the potential money is, to just say how many million?
A little over
10
3
million.
Oh, we only our
M or a B?
has 3.
M?
Not billion.
No, we have 3 million, a little over 3 million. It's like 3.2, I believe, or roughly, that we can use. The state allows you up to $10 million. I won't say discretionary, but it's pretty much discretion. You can use it for almost anything, the way they have it set up, Alex.
Yeah.
That wouldn't put in septic system, would it? I mean, a town sewerage?
I mean, it
it
could definitely make a dent.
if that's what they wanted to use it for, but I don't know what.
I understand. Fair enough.
I mean, it could be used for, it could be used for infrastructure, as I believe. So yes, I guess it could be. It could be used, I believe, for sidewalks has been brought up.
Yep.
I believe it could be used like to offset the cost of the water main project.
Yep.
It can be used for pretty much anything, Alex. It's just a matter of it's up to what the select board would like to use it for. And if I'm sure, like, once we get all the recommendation, we'll bring it in. And any capital ones, like I said, anything over $10,000 will have to be vetted by capital, and capital may come back in and say to the board of selectmen, we agree you should use it for this, and it'll be properly vetted. But I think the limitations of it, you can't use it towards debt. You can't use it towards like OPEB or unpaid benefits. You can't use it for salary.
Right.
What are it's easier, I think, just to say what you can't use it for than what you can use it for.
No, it's true.
I feel better now. I understood it better than I thought.
Look at Marnie's PowerPoint. It was amazing. And
Very
she's got all the check boxes in it of what you can and can't use. If you read the final ruling, and that would make your head spin, that was about 100 pages. And then the overview of the final ruling, that still confused me more than I thought. Marnie's helped, and I'm still reading it. I'm still confused. So. But
does anybody have any ideas off the top of their head that they'd like to see the money used for Shopc? Like, could we use it to buy a piece of land?
That's my idea too. Let's put together what is we'll call it the average piece of an acre lot in Southborough if it was vacant, and put that in for our money, I guess. And I'm going to assume in the 2 years we can identify something and spend it within the 4 years to 2026. But since we don't have anything hot in the hopper besides that Parkerville one, and I don't know how quickly this can get approved. It sounds like it's town meeting, so we might lose out on that with these funds, but I think we could put it in for designated for a plot of land or a building of X value.
Sarah, could you put it into a fund like the Affordable House Trust Fund and just, yeah, I think you can just allocate it. I don't think it needs to be spent. I think just putting it, like taking it from here and putting it into, just taking it and putting into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I hope I said that.
Yeah, that's a really creative question. And I'm not sure, I mean, would it be considered, obligated at that point? And then would it still carry that weight of expenditure, right? Like, I'm not really, I don't know that you could just move it to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and still like not expend it by the end date, but I'm not entirely certain that's the case. What I do know is that you can use it towards grant match funding at the state level. So you can use those federal ARPA dollars against any state grant funds. So if we decided that we wanted to get a grant, or if the community at large received a grant through a state agency, then whatever the match is, typically it's 25%, can be used. Those federal dollars can be used for them.
So what if you wanted to set? I apologize, but
No, go ahead, John.
What if you wanted to set up like a tax relief fund for seniors, or a not just seniors, or for residents, or somebody that's really been impacted by COVID? Does that have to be expended? Like, let's say we said we'd like to see a $50,000 fund set up for, mortgage rent tax relief for Southborough residents. Does that have to be used by 2016 as well, or can that stay a continued funding source?
My current understanding is that all funds need to be expended by 2016 or returned. That's my current understanding.
Now, could you put
Sarah,
it
what date was that?
2016?
2026?
I'm sorry, 2020.
Both of you said 2016. I'm like, guys, we're past that. And then I'm thinking, am I like really messed up that I really don't know what year it is?
I'm just gonna jump in my time machine.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
go back.
Well, this is for the record. It's 2026, not 2016.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you go in the
record.
time machine, buy Bitcoin.
That's right. I'm sorry, 2026. I apologize for the error in speaking.
So what we could do with Affordable Housing Trust Fund, you could set up a separate, Marty, you might be able to answer this, a separate account where people can donate, or we could send the ARPA money there, where it is specifically for the purchase of land only, or something along those lines, where it's very specific and it's put in that account and it's designated and it has to be used for that. That might count for, it's been expended by that time. I'm not sure. Morning, Jesse. But I'm not sure. So that would be something maybe we could ask that question. If it was a separate account for specifically purchasing like land or whatever we chose. Tom.
I'll just chime in with 2 cents. I mean, there was the master plan that where our consultants made some recommendations. So, I mean, I would tend to think that some of those recommended action items would be good things to fund. And, one of the things that the consultant somewhere along the way had said is that, using funds to buy land to create, 1 or 2 affordable units, may not be the most efficient bang for your buck in terms of expenditure of funds to create affordable housing, that there's more, using it for more structural systemic changes, like, adjusting the zoning bylaws to to lessen restrictions on the creation of, for private developers to develop affordable housing and things like that. You know, create a higher yield than, you know, than spending $1 million of half our budget to buy one piece of land to create one house and one affordable unit. So if we're just throwing out ideas to use, I mean, we should, my thought is we should think about earmarking some money for some of those other initiatives, like, you know, zoning changes. And then the other thing, obviously, you know, we have another project that we're looking at is the 21 Highland project, which, you know, I think Dorian's probably going to ask me to talk about in a minute, but one tranche of that, of various options we're looking at, is to have the town self-develop that land. You know, whether you think that's a good idea or a bad idea, as opposed to a private developer doing it. If the town were to self-develop it, then some of those ARPA funds, you know, hopefully could be used to do some of the development costs there. There's, you know, that's an old building that one scenario is we keep the building on there and we rehab it, but it's an old building with, you know, bad stuff in it, and all sorts of improvements need to be done with it, and the electric needs to be upgraded. And, you know, so in terms of Shopc priorities, if that's a project that gets off the ground to create affordable housing on that property, that would seem to be a good object of those funds.
If I may speak for 1 second, Tom, that's a great idea. I just think that with $3 million allocated for the town of Southborough, I think that would eat up a large chunk.
Yeah, I'm not saying use all of it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But then how would you continue funding? Just a, you know, just precautionary here, that costs for construction development are through the roof right now. If you talk to some of the local developers, materials costs and everything. So it'd be great if we had like a 10 million threshold, then you knew you could carry the project through. But what happens if you use like $1 million of it, and then now you still have to finish the project for the rest of them? I'm just saying, just cautionary.
Yeah, no, just to clarify, Karina, I'm not suggesting at all that these ARPA funds would be used to fund the entire project on 21 Highland. There's no way it's going to be, you know, I'm just guessing a $5 million project to do. I'm just saying that if the town, you know, there's one scenario where the town self-develops it. So the town makes a policy decision to devote town resources to the creation of affordable housing on that project, and wherever those funds come from to develop that land. And then, you know, with the idea that there's, you know, if they're condos or the townhouse, whatever they are, they'll get a return back, but someone's got to front the money on the front end. And, you know, some of the things we're looking at is there's a whole alphabet soup of state grants and state funding projects and state agencies who have funding available. There's a patchwork of different funding mechanisms that would come into play, hopefully to help fund that cost, whether the town does the development or a private developer does the development. So all I'm saying is, if we want to devote some of these, if we're looking for funds, objects to apply these funds for Shopc's purposes, you know, that not the whole thing, but some earmarking some of that money towards some of that development may be a good object of that. That's all I'm saying. There's no way that money would fund the entire project, and I'm not suggesting that.
No, and I think avenues like the you know, Shopc pursuing the Mbta Communities requirements, that kind of stuff, consultant assistance costs would be super helpful. Sarah and I were talking about that yesterday. She's going to talk about it more later. So
I have to bounce in like 5 minutes. So I just want to reiterate. So what the ARPA committee is looking for is to have these bullet points, these 4 ideas from each thing by the 15th. That way, I figure that way it gives us time. That's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks away. So maybe if we can see it, maybe have a meeting before them to just, you know, vote on what everybody wants to send in. That gives us time, and most boards and committees, but we're hoping to have it in by the 15th. So from every board and committee, so that way we can start rating and evaluating. I do know that this committee is one that the ARPA committee does want to have come in and talk about things like they'd like to see. So I think if we could have it a little earlier than that, because they may want to see us before then. Again, I was only the chair for one night as an interim chair because we didn't have a full board to both times we met to have an election. So hopefully Thursday we will, and we'll go from there. And I don't know any scheduling ahead of this Thursday. But I'm sure we'll discuss when we want to see you and Youth and Family, if that's okay. So if you can think about it, like I said, it can be used. It's only $3 million over 2 years, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of requests, a lot of capital funding requests. I know there's 700,000 plus this year that it could offset and then be used towards the next couple of years. I know there's other capital projects that in the 10-year plan that they're going to say they could use it for. I wouldn't mind seeing some smaller, $50,000, $100,000 fund set up for rent, mortgage, tax assistance for residents. Things like that. If we could purchase some land like that one on Parkerville, and which would be big enough to put a duplex on, by the way. Things like that I think would be great. So that was all I wanted to make sure that I got in before I have to bounce in like a minute and a half. So
John, when did you say the meeting is? On this Thursday, the 3rd?
yeah, our meeting is this Thursday, the 3rd at 7:30, and Capital's coming in to give an overview of the 5 or 10 year capital plan. DPW was invited. I haven't heard back from Ms. Galligan yet. Facilities was invited because they want to see them. So right this week, it's Board of Health, Capital, Facilities, and DPW that my committee said they wanted to see first. To just give a quick, it's not going to be because I was like, in my experience on advisory, that's about a 4-hour meeting. So we're giving each group probably 5 or 10 minutes to just give their quick, ask them questions, see what they need, what they want, and then discuss after that moving forward how we're going to rate things and evaluate, and surveys for the public.
I was going to ask everyone to squeeze in a quick half-hour meeting sometime before the middle of the month, and so that I guess we could throw that on that agenda. But I had a couple of other things to do some stuff with you guys, so we can do that now if you wanted with John here. Try to figure out another date because we can have everybody send their ideas. Sarah, would you mind if we sent all the ideas to you and you kind of put them all together in case there's duplications?
Yeah, that
Send
works.
them out to everyone of what the ideas are, and then we can discuss them at that separate meeting.
Yeah, that's great.
Short, or just a shorter meeting, guys. I don't want it to be dragged out for like hours. So if everybody can just look at their calendars really quickly.
I can be available pretty much any mornings for the next couple of weeks.
How about February 10th? Does that work for everybody? February 10th? Do it at 8:30 and say like 8:30 to 9. I really don't want it to be a long discussion. And if it goes over a little bit, that's fine. But I really am looking for a shorter meeting because we're squeezing an extra one in here. So Shopc on the 10th at 8:30. So John, you have that on your schedule. Is that okay? So everybody's fine with that? All right, so perfect. All right, John, you're at 8:55.
Thank you. I will, if I can bounce back, if you guys are still going in the next 20 minutes, I will be back. So
Okay.
thank you very much, and everybody have a good day.
John. Okay, I'm gonna jump back up to the top of the agenda, master plan. Tom, would you like to take over on that?
Yeah, sure. There's no updates from what was spoken in the last meeting. We had not had a master plan committee meeting in between our last Shopc meeting and this meeting. So I think it's, what is it, the 18th or something? No, 16th is our next meeting. So Sarah and I it's exactly what's in the same minutes. We're fine tuning our document to present to the larger group.
Okay, so we don't have a final draft to take a look at yet. That's still forthcoming.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be probably better if we give you the draft after the master plan committee reviews it.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. Just following up and making sure that we give you an opportunity to discuss if you need to discuss anything. Okay.
Yep, status quo. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, Tom, you are up with the subcommittee report. And you can mute.
There's the mute button. We're getting to the point, this committee has been going in fits and starts a little bit since its origin. We've had 3 meetings canceled because of technical problems. We've been having meetings at 7 o'clock at night when no one from IT is available. So we had at least 3 meetings that we had to cancel because we couldn't figure out the Zoom. But over the course of fits and starts, we've gathered a lot of information. We're kind of viewing ourselves as a research and report committee, and different members of the committee have different policy views as to what should or shouldn't be done with that property and how it should be done. But I think we've been trying to focus on, hey, we're not a policymaking board. We are a research and report board, and let the policymaking people like the Board of Selectmen and capital planning make the big pictures. Our job is to gather information, present some options for potential development of that property, and then let the smarter people make the harder decisions as to whether they want to go forward with it and what direction to take. So we've gotten to the point, without getting into too much of the granular level of it, we've been looking at a lot of different things, from the development potential to, we had the president of the Mass Builders Association come in. They took a hard look at the property and just talked about some of the development potentials. And we talked about things about keeping the building there or demoing the building. Again, no policy decisions, just different development options. Some private developers, for instance, would see the old skill building as an impediment to development because it's a headache and a cost to rehab that building, as opposed to demoing it and putting up 2 new townhouses. It's cheaper and more bang for the buck for a private developer. But there are other political considerations and historical considerations to keep the building, even if it's an additional cost. And there's historic building rehabilitation programs in the state that could come into play. So there's the sort of lattice work of different considerations that come into these things that we're trying to pull together in some cohesive form to present as a report to the Board of Selectmen and Shopc and capital planning to digest, hopefully in some helpful form. So at our last meeting, we decided that, we've sort of pulled together enough information that we're going to start putting together the bones of a report. I don't think we're quite to the point where we're ready to issue a report, but we're starting to bring together. Jesse did a great zoning analysis on the property and some of the zoning applicable and some of the challenges there that come into play. So all of that will be factored into the report. And again, without going into the granular details, I mean, in broad strokes, there's kind of 2 dichotomies of having the town develop the property, where the town's not motivated by the need to get an investment return. They're motivated more by the desire to create affordable housing. Not that they want to be irresponsible with public funds and public assets, but if they want to create this, that's a way to do it. We talked about things like having it developed through the housing authority and different ways of doing that. The downside of and the town owns the land. The downside of that is, again, broad strokes, the town, it can be inefficient for a public entity to do development. And they're subject to the public procurement laws, and let's face it, towns are not experienced developers, and the town of Southborough has done some big developments like the public safety building, but it's not the most efficient way to do development, to have the town run the whole thing. So if you go the other tranche of private developers have a lot more experience. They've got the relationships with contractors. They've got they know where to get the materials, that they're efficient at doing it. They've got engineers lined up to get permits and things like that. So, one school of thought is it's more efficient to have a private developer do it, but they of course need to make an investment return, and it's hard to make an investment return if the units are to be affordable, whether they're rental units or whether they're condo units sold at an affordable rate. So there's different you know, advantages and disadvantages to do that. Again, some of these public state funding grants come into play and they benefit private developers as well. So that could be brought into play. And then there's also the element of the actual land. You know, the town owns the land. Let's just call it a $2 million asset or a $1.5 million asset. You know, the question becomes, does the town, if they want to create affordable housing, and if they were to do it themselves, they would devote that $2 million asset to the creation of affordable housing. If we switch over to the other tranche where a private developer is doing it, would the town be willing to devote the same $2 million asset to the same purpose and have it done by a private developer? So those are some of the sort of options. Again, we're not taking a policy decision. We're not saying you should do it this way, you should do it that way. You know, our objective is to say, okay, here's, you know, 2 different broad pathways and 3 different tranches within each pathway where the town could consider, you know, developing this property. And here's one option to do something with the land in a public-private partnership, and you would do zoning. So those are the types of things that we're planning to incorporate into this report. So that's basically where we are. We're a little bit behind. I've been in a bit of a black hole the last month with a crazy December, and then I just changed firms. So I'm actually supposed to be the author of this. So I've got some bones, but I've got some work to do. So more to come on that.
Personal life first, Tom. You take care of that stuff first. We're good. Don't feel pressure from us. We understand. Please do not feel pressure from this group at all. You have to take care of you and your family first and foremost. So, question. Have you talked to developers about the possibilities of what could be done on that? A, if the building was torn down, and B, if we rehab that building, or if they did?
We have, and without, I think, needing to name any names, we've spoken to 3 different developers who know the site well, and probably developers who most of the people on this call know. And, you know, basically they're again, they haven't done a feasibility study. They haven't, you know, but experienced developers with decades of experience. I mean, these are people that can look at a piece of land and know the situation and say, yeah, I think I could do X. And what they're basically telling us is they could do, you know, 10 to 12 townhouse units on the property. In terms of just site feasibility, given the layout of the site and access and things like that. Again,
Tom, to interrupt, did the committee realize that there's additional acreage on that property that could be A&R'd off? In your discussions with the developers, were they aware that there's, you know, excess property there beyond the building?
You mean that additional parcel, which I'm losing, I forget what we're calling it. There's the main parcel, and then there's another parcel that's owned by the town in some facility. It's a smaller parcel, Jay. So we've been treating that as being part of the site.
But I mean the parcel itself, the main parcel. I think when that original proposer came in and he was going to put 2 ownership units there at market rate, and then also cut out 2 or 3 A&R lots from the 21 Highland Street property in order to get some return on investment there as well. I was just wondering if your 21 committee was aware of that. And I think there was an appraisal done at that time as well, if you hadn't seen that yet.
Yeah, I've seen those things. I think the A&R means, and I could be wrong, Karina, that they're taking the existing land and then subdividing it with portions of the land that have frontage on Highland Avenue. So I don't think that they were talking about adding additional land beyond that. I think they were taking the existing.
No, that's what I'm saying, that they would cut out a piece for the existing building, and that would become 1 lot. And then they still had land left in order to cut 2 or 3 additional lots out.
Yeah, no, that's one way to do it. I mean, that's the way development's, one way development is done, is take a piece of land and divide it up into different lots and then sell them as lots and sell them as different house lots. I think
just wondering if you guys knew that.
Yeah, for our purposes, I don't think we're really interested in doing that, because what we're trying to do is develop multifamily units on the same lot that can be used for affordable housing. So we haven't contemplated breaking the property up into individual lots.
Because it seems funny.
The acreage is 4.2 acres of the entire space, approximately. No matter what it is, every nook and little cranny, that lot is 4.2 acres. That's all there is. There's nothing in that we could get.
Right. There's
done.
not like an additional land,
4.2.
but I think, yeah, Korea's saying the prior developer who was proposing to come in and do it was going to do one thing on the main part and then carve out a couple of smaller lots and sell those to get an investment return. I get that. That's what they were planning to do, which, you know, would probably made sense for that developer. But for our purposes, for creating affordable housing, I think we went, you know, again, we're not making policy decisions, but, you know, if we're going to try to create affordable housing, I think we want a little bit of a denser yield of units on the property than,
Right.
you know.
And to get more bang for our buck and to get more in there, you'd really need to tear that building down and not work around it and spend the money to rehab it with all the asbestos and whatever else is in that.
Yeah.
building.
But, you know, another builder's come in,
That's
so that's
historical.
really, but another builder's come in and said, hey, you know, if you really did it right, you could take that building and create maybe 3 or 4 units within that building. So there is a scenario where keeping that building may make sense.
Right.
It's a pain in the neck and costly, but if they get historical rehabilitation funds to help offset those costs, you know, that could make sense. Again,
I love
if
the
somebody
building.
smarter than me to figure out what the best way to do it is,
Yeah.
but you know, there is a scenario where it makes sense to keep the building.
Okay.
Could I just chime in for 1 sec, please? So under the current zoning, adaptive reuse is an option for this site. And that, you know, would not require any zoning changes at town meeting. And also I have been, you know, contacted by open space folks, and we do need to keep in mind, we would need to get a project through town meeting. So the goodwill of the community and the abutters is going to come into play here. So we do need to kind of keep all factors in mind moving forward on this.
Yeah. Alex, you're muted.
I have a confession to make, and I maybe should have mentioned this to Tom before. I have very, very strong feelings against taking down historic buildings. I've chaired a lot of commissions to prevent that from happening. And one of the things I want to speak with Tom as to whether it's a plus or a minus if I approach the Historic Commission and see if I can get their support to look for funds and the like for this. So if it gets to the point that we're talking about taking it down, I've got a big conflict of interest personally.
So Alex and Jesse's comments are exhibiting some of the dynamics within this committee, which different people have different policy views on what should or shouldn't be done. I keep coming back to the fact that we can all have our policy decisions, but our subcommittee is not the board that's going to make those policy decisions. Our subcommittee is the board that's going to research different options, present them to the smarter people who will make those policy decisions and let them run with them. So our committee is not going to go seek approval from town meeting for any particular project. We're going to submit a report to the people above us to let them decide whether they want to take the initiative to put a project before. So Alex, I think your consideration goes to the next level beyond what we're doing on the subcommittee. You know, we're going to say, hey, you can keep the building, pros and cons. You can get rid of the building, pros and cons. You guys decide what direction you want to take. And then once they take that point, then we can all jump on board with whatever policy, you know, views we have on the development.
Fair enough.
What they should
And
do.
and I don't think you should be running to any other committee with information that's not complete and not done yet. And these are just talking points and considerations. There's nothing final here. And to go to another committee and ruffle feathers and then have us start having arguments and confrontations that we don't need to be having at this point, that's totally unwarranted. So please don't do that.
That's why I haven't done it at this point.
Right, please don't do that. Let these guys do their job. Let them look at the pros and cons. I love the building. So I mean, I don't know what I would want to do, but I love that building personally. So it's historic. I understand that. But we have a mandate from the state. We have to do something. And so we are looking at all of our options. So let the subcommittee do their job, pros and cons on all options, present it to us, and then we will take it from there.
Understood, but just a reminder, I'm on the subcommittee, but I've
I
understood.
understand, Alex, that's why I'm saying
Understand
to
that,
you,
that's why I
please
haven't
don't-
done, that's why I haven't gone to them yet.
I know, but you shouldn't be discussing anything that you guys are finding with any other committee that you're on. It should be staying in-house. And I understand it's recorded and people can hear this, but this is for, these guys need to do what we've asked them to do without any kind of interference, outside interference. So if you're on the subcommittee and you have information, you should be keeping it within the subcommittee and reporting it to Shopc, because we are the ones you're supposed to be coming back and forth with.
Understood, that's why I haven't done it yet.
Okay, well,
And in fairness
please don't.
to everyone, we're all citizens of Southborough as well as being on the committee. So sometimes it's hard. Sometimes there's a blurry line between carrying out our public charge and our own personal. So,
Right.
hey, we're all humans. We're all, it's hard to see that line sometimes.
So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. This is a huge undertaking, and I'm grateful for the time and energy you guys have put into this. So keep up the good work, please. We're grateful for you guys, and I know it's tough, but somebody's
just ask
got to do
one-
it.
Can I
Yes,
ask a
Serena?
simple question? Tom, in the discussions with the 21 committee, is it all lending itself to ownership of any kind of?
No, we talked about rental as well. And, it's just, at some point it starts to get into the weeds of the real economics of it. It's like if
Okay.
it's, so I don't think that we're quite at that granular level, but we're not definitely saying
It's not
you
off
should
the
do
table.
ownership or you should do, we've definitely talked about, whether they should be rental units.
Okay, thanks.
but-
I just.
Yeah, no, it's again, everything's sort of on the table and at some point, it gets really complicated. It gets really granular. At some point, our board is struggling with, at what point do we need to cut it off and just say, look, this is where we're at. If somebody wants to delve in further to exactly how the affordability rental program works and how that works with the state, we're not at that granular level. We're more on feasibility development and different ways they can go. I guess my view is that's for the next level. If somebody wants to pursue a rental pathway, then they would run the traps on what that rental would look like. But we're not advocating anything, but we're not really completely focused on setting this up as saleable, condominium or town.
You're just saying what can fit there. And
Yeah,
what could
basically,
work dimensionally and. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure. Thanks, Dorian.
Okay. Mbta Communities. We have to have a very big discussion on this still. Did everybody get the maps? Sarah, can you share those on the screen with everyone?
So, yeah.
So the last meeting, we had talked about the MBTA wanting a 50-acre parcel. It had to be within a half a mile from the MBTA station, which puts us down in the 710 units was the mandate that they were at least considering at this point. In our
750.
discussions at the last meeting, none of us could come up with an area where we would actually have 50 acres to look at the MBTA area. We've got the Hopkinton State Forest that abuts the backside of that. So you'd have to move more into the residential area of Southborough. So Sarah, I'm going to let you take this. You've created these maps. So if
Sure.
you can just kind of walk us through where these areas are represented on these different maps.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, we're looking to target a 50-acre area based on what the current criteria is from the state. And so these are very rudimentary, very basic, very draft maps, just to kind of highlight what the area could potentially look like. So here, the train station is right here. This is South Union. So train station, South Union, and then this way. Again, I sort of drew these just to show different shapes, but I don't have any kind of commitment to exactly, what streets these are on, exactly what homes are included or excluded. So I just wanted to give some visual representation for the discussion. This is a secondary kind of map. Again, you have the train station, you have South Union. I think the one thing that we do know is that we have to include the train station. I think that the secondary thing that we are all sort of targeting and kind of on the heels of our last discussion is making sure that South Union is within whatever catchment area we do decide to create.
Which is the 0.5 acres. Or, yeah.
Sarah, quick question. I know that the MBTA program requires it to be within a half mile of the train station. I thought that 21 Highland was just barely within that. Are these areas?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think that there is a little bit of an inherent conflict within their rollout, because what they're requiring from us now is these 50 acres. So 50 acres is obviously going to stretch beyond that radius from the train station, especially for us. If the train station was centrally located within Southborough and we could draw a circle around it, we might be able to be a little bit closer. But if they want 50 acres in Southborough proper, we're definitely going to go past that mileage requirement. So, I mean, that's definitely a question perhaps for town council, or maybe.
Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, did they mention at one of the workshops in the past couple of weeks that only half of the 50 acres has to be within a half mile?
Oh,
there you go.
Interesting.
Right, I think that was kind of new information that just came out clarifying it, because they probably received pushback on it, but I think.
Right.
I could be mistaken. I still have to look into it more, but we should check. I think half of the 50 acres only needs to be within a half mile. And that's when John Wood was talking about we could possibly go towards Route 9 more.
Well, I mean, my understanding is that they still need to be contiguous, but
yeah,
maybe not. I mean, we would make it to Route 9.
Yeah, but that might give a little relief.
Yeah. So then the last one would just be this one. And I'm just going to move this over so we can see.
Where is Route 9 on these maps? Because I don't see it.
North.
It's north, very far north.
So there's no way we can include that in this.
Right. Not contiguously anyway. I mean, if it's found out that we can separate and make 2 25-acre spaces, or then we could do that, but we definitely couldn't do it with contiguous property. No.
Okay, so that's a done deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this kind of diagram in particular is sort of interesting. It does still include South Union and the train station, and then sort of just follows, up and down along 85, creating kind of a linear space for that sort of development. And I sent these to Dorian for review, but I did not get them out to the full group. So I'm happy to send them to everyone, at the end of this call so that you have them. And again, they're really more for visual representation, just to kind of start the discussion, than any sort of, concrete offering of what these boundaries would inevitably look like.
Yes, please send them out to everyone. I actually meant to, and
That's okay.
so that's my bad.
So I guess my initial is, does anyone feel, more strongly or not, in terms of what shapes they're seeing right now that are being offered?
The thing about this is that entire area is already developed. We have South Union School, which is outside, but yes, it can be included in the 50 acres. But that whole area is already developed. So what are we supposed to do with that? I mean, they're charged of getting 700 and, what is it, 710, 726 units. It's impossible for us to do that. We can't do that as a town.
We've got to think this through as best we can for ourselves, but realistically, we've got, in my opinion, far less of a problem than a lot of the towns east of us. And I don't see how other towns are even going to begin to try to do it that are built up around it. I mean, what's Boston supposed to do? Tear down a few blocks? It's just not going to happen. So realistically, I think we've got to think this through, but I'll be surprised if this doesn't change. The requirement doesn't change markedly. Look how
Can I ask a dumb
packed
question
it is.
for Sarah? I mean, I've always been viewing this as like a zoning overlay. I mean, just like any other zoning overlay,
Yes. Yes.
you put the zoning in place. That doesn't mean that whatever is permitted under that zoning is going to happen in the next 6 months. It just means that
Correct.
there's a zoning overlay that permits someone in the future to do X, 15 units per acre.
Correct.
If some rich developer acquired the entire, 50
Yes.
acre lot, they could do it, but it doesn't mean that any houses that exist in the zoning today have to get torn down to create this housing. It's just a zoning overlay. So
Yes, it's interesting. I think that they have, DHCD has sort of, I think is continuing to kind of recalibrate that message, right? So originally it was, you have to create this housing. Now it's, you have to create a space where this housing could potentially exist. And I think for all the, aforementioned, challenges that exist across the Commonwealth. So I think it will be interesting to see if they, offer additional guidance. We'll have to just see. I think, it was a long time in between the mandate and this now, what I would really consider the initial guidance. So I would hope that there would be more offerings in terms of what they really are looking for in the, weeks and months to come.
That's a very good point. I wasn't thinking of overlay. I was thinking of being told that you have to put all these houses somewhere in this area.
that's always like the political challenge. If people
Thank
hear
you.
a zoning overlay and they think, oh, my house is in the zoning overlay, I'm going to lose my house. And it's just,
I'm one of those people. See, that's what I was concerned about. I'm like, you can't we're already developed. People are living there. What do you want us to do with
right.
this? Like,
Right.
but if it's just an overlay district and then sometime in the future, when those houses get torn down, then they're going to have to do,
And they may never be torn down.
right. But
It's entirely possible that no housing whatsoever is ever created in the zoning district. that was
right. So
created.
this is kind of a dumb thing that they're doing. This doesn't make any sense. It's a complete waste of energy. It's a complete waste of time. It's not going to accomplish a single thing.
So
I mean,
Dorian, what this reminds me of a little bit is what's going on in East Boston right now on the site of the old Suffolk Downs racetrack. There's a really massive project in front of the Boston Planning and Development Board. I don't know what stage it's at, but there's going to be, thousands of units of commercial and residential stuff. And it obviously impacts the abutters, and their meetings, their planning and development board meetings have been, made ours look like picnics. So I hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, it's funny how the future does happen eventually. And in my experience, our developer friends, stakeholders play the long game, and it may not seem feasible right this moment, but it's funny how things change. Thanks.
I agree with what Jesse said. Going back to your last map, that yellow building in the corner there of 85 and what is it, Southville?
Yep.
I can see if we put that zone in there, say like you
And it
said,
went
Jesse
down.
says, over time, couple of houses sell, that building sells, and now they can put a highly dense housing in that area because we created this, and as Tom said, this overlay district. So their rules are going to change if, like Jesse says, I could see 5-10 years from now, I picked this one up, I picked this one up, I picked this one up, and now I get that corner building, and now I can throw in 300 rental units or whatever. I'm making that up. But
Yeah,
They
it
can
means that the
create-
neighbors may be in closer proximity to higher density, but of course a
Yes.
Shopc, right? We like this. We like the fact that the zoning is going to be more enabling towards denser, affordable housing. So we, with our Shopc hats on,
Yep.
think that this is a good thing.
So Sarah, can you put that last map that you put up, the elongated section
Absolutely.
that would have included that yellow building on the corner
Yep.
there?
See, that's the one I kind of like the best. And I think if people don't know Southborough, be like, well, it's all along the tracks. It kind of like makes sense versus, meandering around. What do you got? Gerrymandering to other parcels.
That's the one
But
I
what-
like the most too, Tom.
What
Yeah.
you have to remember is when you develop the zoning district, that I think making it available so someone be able to build, you have to remember what your dimensional requirements you're going to restrict it to or open it up to. So, when you talk about that yellow building and you say, well, but if you're only going to allow 4 stories in that MBTA community, so whatever your dimensional requirement is, you have to make sure it will lend itself to somebody being able to build 750 units or, I don't
No,
know.
I totally agree with that, but I'm just saying, if I'm a developer and I'm very patient, you see where
Yeah,
Sarah has her cursor north of the
Yes.
railroad tracks. You take all those houses over time and you build a 4-story, highly dense housing complex like they have in downtown Framingham. I don't know if you guys ever go through there by the train station. You could definitely do all that there.
right. And
Where's
it's
the
not that
yellow
Over
somebody,
time. We're
Yeah,
talking
where's the
That's
yellow
not
building
tomorrow.
on that? Sarah, where's the yellow building on that?
I believe it's right
Right there. Yep.
here.
in the corner
Yes.
85 and yeah.
Yep.
So it's not that someone has to come in and build 750 units. It gets parsed out. It's just ultimately the area has to be able to handle
Support.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
support. That's all.
Yep. And then I think, to your point, Karina, obviously dimensional requirements and such would be worked out, through that overlay process, and defining,
Right.
exactly, how much square area, we know that as a known, that's the 50 acres. And then, within that 50 acres, those particular plots of land, how much of that can be built out, because obviously if you take 50 acres and you include a bunch of parcels that are non-buildable, you're obviously not going to meet your goal. So,
Also,
there
if you have
definitely-
like 50-foot setbacks that,
Right, exactly.
shrinks your zone where
Right.
you can't.
Yep.
So I'm just saying all that's going to be taken into consideration.
Yes, so there's definitely some finite details to
Yeah.
work through as we continue on this process with this overlay.
Well, it's something for us to continue to take a look at. But I wanted you guys to see the maps, and I do apologize for not emailing them to you, but at least there's just some ideas for us to consider when we're looking at this whole law that's coming into play. Okay, Affordable Housing Trust 5-year plan, warrant article language.
Yep, so everyone received the warrant article language. We had shared it and reviewed it at our last meeting. At this point, it seems like it's time to start to get it in front of the Board of Selectmen. Emma, our consultant, continues to work on developing those that 5-year strategic plan and those strategies that are going to be included in that process. We also discussed the development of a 1-pager. So to have like a 1-page kind of narrative summary in order to present that to the Board of Selectmen as well as to town meeting, so that folks can really have an understanding of, why we're going to be transferring these funds into the Affordable Housing Trust, give a little bit of a background as to the communities that do, already engage in this type of process, so that there is an additional context along with the warrant article. At this point, you know, in terms of receiving that information back from Emma, it looks like, you know, attending the first Board of Selectmen meeting in March would make a lot of sense in order to discuss with them kind of next steps. I think, you know, obviously it has to go to town council for review, and then, you know, in front of CPC at some point. So I think it's just about, you know, when those things take place. So that's kind of a high level overview of where we are with that. You know, MAPC, and this is sort of a segue in between our last two discussions. You know, they do offer district local technical assistance grants in order to kind of move forward any projects. So, you know, once we kind of are getting towards the end of our process with MAPC in terms of our 5-year strategic plan, we may want to think about applying for another DLTA grant in order to have some support and technical assistance around creating the district, you know, for Mbta communities. So that's all of it in a nutshell, but you know, happy to continue a discussion regarding all that.
And I just want to, Sarah, good point about the MAPC grants. So those DTLA grants are kind of revolving, so those can be submitted at any time. And Ralph Wilmer is heads up that division, and they put out a call for project concepts. And one of the things they said was they can conduct build-out analysis, draw maps and district boundaries, and that kind of technical assistance. So that's another avenue to get assistance with that Mbta Communities. Just a food for thought. Thanks, Sarah.
Marty, is CPC meeting anytime soon? Do they have any kind of, is there any on the horizon?
You know, I literally just looked at the February meetings, and there hasn't, I think their last meeting was sometime in early December. I keep waiting to be contacted with information, and hasn't happened. I mean, some of it might be that they won't meet until there are sort of firmer proposals from various committees and the like. And so I don't know what the status of those are. But the short answer to your question is they've not met, and there is nothing on the February schedule.
Okay. You know, obviously another group that we'll need to engage in regards to this process is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And I know that they sort of meet on an as needed basis. So it may make sense to start to engage them and ask them to review the warrant article language and that one pager once we get it as well. So
Do we have a time when we are going to see that one-page document? Because we need to vote on that as a committee.
Yes. Yep.
Discuss it and vote on it as to whether we want that handed out at town meeting or not, with, you know, information. The other thing is we can't present this warrant article. So this has to be, we really need to get the Affordable Housing Trust Fund involved, as well as the BOS. The question is, do we want to take this warrant article in the draft form as it reads now and maybe send it over to Jay Tallerman and our legal group to take a look at the language in this warrant article, see if this is viable? If it's viable, bring it back, make it a final, make it almost maybe a final. I don't know. I think we need the BOS and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to look at it before we vote it in its final form. So I'm not sure if we should send it to Jay Tallerman first to take a look at it with his group to see the viability of it, and then get it over to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is comprised of also the BOS and 2 at-large members, which I am one of them with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but because this money and this benefits Shopc, I'm going to recuse myself on the vote. So, but this, we have to decide which steps we want to do. Sarah and I discussed it. I think we should probably have legal look at it to make sure it's viable before we waste the time of the Board of Selectmen with this. Does anybody have?
I'd have Jay
Marty?
Talaman look at it.
Okay.
I mean, I think it'll save time. Because
Yeah.
that would be one of the first questions I'd have, and I suspect other members of the Board of Selectmen would have.
Okay.
Is has legal counsel looked at this? So
Okay.
I'd send it to him. I send it through Mark.
Okay, well, that's what I would do. So Sarah, let's send this through Mark today if we can. And tell them this is a draft idea for a warrant article. And Marty, it would have to be presented by the BOS because the Affordable Housing Trust Fund can't present an article, correct?
I don't know the answer to that. Obviously we can, but I don't know whether or not you're restricted from doing that. I'm not sure why you would, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, Sarah, I guess we can ask Jay that too. We can
Yeah,
ask.
absolutely. My understanding is that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is not an entity that can sponsor a warrant article at town meeting, but again, happy to defer to the experts on that and ask Jay when we send over the warrant article language.
Okay. So let's send that over, get legal's advice. We'll get it over to the BOS. At some point, we do need to talk with CPC, but I'm not gonna hold this up to wait for them to have a meeting. So let's just go forward with this now with legal, and then we'll decide on what the next step is. But this is a draft form that will be very clear. We have not voted. This is not a final document. So if they want to make, if there's changes we need to make, let's do all of that before we vote a final warrant article. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions or any comments or possible changes to what you see that was sent to you already? No? Okay. All right, Sarah, then that's ready to go as is.
Great, thank
Perfect.
you.
Dorian, I just want to
Yes.
make the Shopc aware that, and Sarah, you might want to look into this. Remember the DHCD guidance for adopting amending zoning bylaws? In that, the first part talks about changing a zoning bylaw or an ordinance begins with filing a proposal with the Board of Selectmen. And it
Yep.
can be initiated by City Council, Board of Selectmen, Zoning Board, an individual who owns lands which would be affected by the proposal, 10 or more registered voters with a certain format, 10 registered voters in a city, a planning board, a regional planning agency, or other methods provided by municipal charter. So that might be a document to reference.
Yeah, that was that was the information.
You're aware of that one? Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Karina. Okay. The other item, Sarah, I don't see this on the agenda. Do I not have the revised agenda?
The EDC item.
Yes.
The EDC item is on the agenda. I revised it at the end of yesterday. So you probably just have the last one, but it was
Okay.
definitely posted and we are in compliance to speak on it.
Okay. So we sent you all the letter that Marika had sent to all of the stakeholders of this grant that the money they're working on to get funding. And they want to get our input on Route 9. Do you guys have that letter in front of you that she sent? Have you read it?
What's it called? I got the email from you, Sarah, on the 29th.
Sure. I sent her email would have been a forward to everyone, and I believe came from Karina, but I can re-forward it to everybody.
Yeah, please. I got your
Sure.
18th Shopc. Communities.
And I mean, it's short. I can read it to you too while Sarah sends it to you. Good afternoon. The EDC requests your feedback. This is to inform you the Economic Development Committee intends to submit an expression of interest for the One Stop for Community Grant Program for the next round of funding for FY23. It's the same year, the EOI is F23 is the same as last year's application, except for the fact that it's streamlined towards just a zoning review and zoning update for Route 9. This EOI is part of the broader Route 9 Business Corridor Initiative that will look at various identified issues such as wastewater, infrastructure, financial incentives, traffic, as well as zoning. This committee's aim is to submit the attached document as soon as possible in order to benefit from the state's recommendations. This will also ensure enough time to work on a final grant application. The EDC values your input and respectfully requests your feedback no later than today, February 1st. I received this sometime on the 24th of January. The letter itself didn't include anything with housing. So if you look at the documents, it does. So I don't think we have enough time to discuss this today. I actually would like to bring this discussion to the meeting that we just scheduled for February the 10th, so that everybody can have some time to take a look at these attachments and see if there's something that we can make a comment on. This is the one-stop grant that we had applied for. We actually had the better grant idea, but EDC needs it more, I guess, or however the decision was made, we got taken out of the picture. EDC got the opportunity to apply for the grant. They've been afforded the money. And this is just, I guess, steps in the process. So I'm assuming this is with the what's it called? Sarah, what's the term? The housing with the businesses below and the
Mixed use.
Mixed use.
that's it, the mixed use, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that this has something to do with mixed use. That's why we're involved, but you have to go through all those documents. I think this discussion is better for a different day than right now, because we really didn't get a lot of notice on this. We got this at 4:30 on the 21st. I was actually out of town. So,
So yeah, and I apologize. I thought it had gone out to the group from Karina, but it had gone out to planning, and so I could have sent it over as well. But it was sort of short notice either way. But I did send it to everyone now. The good thing about the one-stop application is that the expression of interest is due on February 4th, and that's actually an early submission in order to gain feedback on any type of submission that's put in, but it's not the final application. The final application is actually due, in a few weeks. So getting in the EOI by the 4th benefits the town by receiving feedback on the final product before it's submitted.
And just so that you're aware, I spoke with Marika because this did come kind of quickly, because the planning board also felt it was short notice and wanted the opportunity, because our meeting is next Monday. And Marika said that, they want to get the form in to make sure that the state knows that the town is still super interested, but that feedback can come in and be incorporated into the final grant documents, after today. It's just they want to get this initial form in to make sure that they're in the queue.
Right, much like last year, the one-stop administrators are offering preliminary feedback on expressions of interest before a final application is submitted. So that's what Marika is trying to do, is to get in front of that submission process, get the EOI in so that we can get some preliminary feedback. So, feedback from this committee and feedback from planning will be able to be rolled into that final submission.
right, but with a week's notice, this is a pretty hefty discussion when we already had a full agenda. So that was another reason why I wanted to do a second meeting, to try to help EDC out and at least to meet and discuss this. So just a heads up, if you guys could do a little bit of homework for the 10th, read through the document and just look at what they're looking for, and then we can discuss the ideas and go forward from that on the 10th. Okay. All
Great,
right.
sounds good.
I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions or anything else they want to add? Okay,
Yes, Dorian,
then-
just one
yes.
point
Yep.
regarding in fiscal year 23, the Shopc will have to determine how they want to have their minutes recorded, recording clerk, just so that you're aware that the Board of Selectmen accepted a policy, and we may not have Kate after the end of this fiscal year. So
Yes, June
just
30th,
letting
right.
you know. Okay.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I knew
Okay.
that, Karina. Thank you, though. Thank you for the
You're welcome.
reminder.
Sorry.
That Board of Selectmen, man, I'll tell you.
Mhm.
All right.
Thanks.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:46 a.m. Somebody
So
move
moved.
it.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second it.
Okay. All those in favor, it's a roll call vote. Alex, you are muted. Alex, you're muted.
Aye.
Okay, Marty,
Aye.
Tom M,
Aye.
Tom B,
Aye.
Jesse,
Yep.
and Dorian is the affirmative. Okay, thanks for your time.